got it. I just wanted to touch on lightly the progress of getting a PCB made to hold my TTGO board. I was using Fritzing. For anybody who wants to use it, I mean, just a few tips from my experience. I just used this perf board layout, put the main microcontroller on, and then put a couple of the 3-pin posts here, and then the schematic, which looks nice and organized, well, I think anyway, it tends to put those all over the place. So I just started with a couple of devices or 3-pin items here before putting them all, so that it just wasn't a big hot mess. And then as well went over to the PCB board, and clicked this auto route feature and made sure that things were lined up the way that I wanted to. I mean, the moral of all of that is start slow, get the auto rotate or auto route run so you can see where it's putting things, adjust your labels, and as opposed to put them all on there at the same time, all on the breadboard at the same time, because it can get a little bit disorienting and things need to be rotated and relabeled and whatnot. So that was a little bit of advice for anybody trying to use it. It's actually, once you've done it once, surprisingly simple and straightforward to sort of get it organized. And then another thing that you have to do is you auto route it, which lays out your routes, as you can guess, and then you have to click something here called design rules check. And for me, I had to work through about 10 different issues or errors that this design rules check process through, and they were largely around the spacing on the auto route. So as an example, it might have tried to route that, and because that was, I guess it thought it was a little too close, the resolution was, well, move that route a little bit up, and had some of the same issues down in here where it just didn't, the design rules check was throwing some errors. So it's probably 6 different ways of fixing that, or you could probably even ignore some of them. But I chose to work through all the issues and get it to get a clean design rule check before sending it off to be fabbed. Now, the fabbing process, Fritzing has a fabrication process. But what I did is, well, I first tried Fritzing because I'm like, hey, if they were nice enough to create this software, give them the fabricating business. But their costs and timing and getting it mailed to the US was, I think, looked like it was going to be a challenge. But the way you get that is export for production, extended Gerber, and it produces a zip file out of all of that with about a dozen or so files. And then you start looking around for who will fabricate based on that. And so I ended up checking Osh Park and PCB Way as well as Fritzing, and ended up going with PCB Way. And the actual boards, I think the way this works is the actual boards cost $5 and you get, I'm assuming, 5 pieces. And then the DHL fee to get those 5 boards shipped to the US was like $23. So all in all, it's like $30. More than, you know, almost all of that is for shipping. In Oshpark, they're based in the US and I would have gone with them. Because 3 boards would have been $30. It's like, I'll probably change the design and I'll end up using all of the boards, but anyway, but the timing was just like, hey, we'll get back to you in a month. And yeah, if I can, like 10 days versus a month, and I selected these guys. So the board should show up, I think tomorrow is what the tracking is saying. So that's been my experience so far in using Fritzing and laying out a PCB and starting with the breadboard, working through the schematic, and then getting the auto routing and errors cleared, and then ordering a board. Seems, once you do it once, it seems pretty simple, and I'm sure you can get really sophisticated. And this is just a 2-layer board. I saw in the quote, you know, they would quote a 4-layer board. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know, that sounds like 3-dimensional chess, even trying to figure that out. So, but for my purposes, that was the process. That's all I have today.
So on that that process you're doing, that you clicked on a button that said create fabrication files and said it gave you a zip file. Did you do anything extra with that, or you just took that file and sent that right off in email to get your boards?
I just took that file, and the quoting process, we'll see how it comes out, but the quoting process for all of them was, well, Fritzing just took the data straight from their tool, and then the other 2, they took the whole zip file, and you upload the whole zip file as one file, and they figure out what they need, and then they say, oh, here's the file I need, and give you a view of what it's going to look like. It's crazy slick. But you think about it, I mean, it has to be, because they're charging $1 a board. There can never be a human to touch that. It's like just feeding it into the machine and it spits it out.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it looks. And then I had to put the holes in. That's another step. One of the final steps is to put these mounting holes in the board, and that was one more step in the process. And in the Slack post, I posted an image, plus I posted what I think is the Fritzing file. So if anybody wanted to look at it, the actual Fritzing file is in the Slack post as well. So that's all I got. Anything on your end today?
I was going to make a couple comments. When you get your board back, it'll once you have a physical board in front of you, it'll be more obvious of what you have and what you should have done or should not have done. But it's somewhat of a learning experience, and you'll find that say the one you got up here right now, just some comments. I like to, when I make my board, try to get the traces away from, instead of just running a trace from one point to another point right across the board. Like, so you got something at about a 45-degree angle on the right hand side there. You could, if you had time, you could clean those up and make them, put square corners and things like that. And just simply, you'll notice it when it does the auto router. There's places where it tries to run the traces as close to the pins as possible. Whether when you're done, you could drag those away just so you don't have anything close to the pins, so there's no danger of something shorting out or whatever. And on those connector, you got the 3-pin connectors all over the place. If you decide to go to one that's got the locking type connector, it's going to be physically larger, so you can decide if I assume right now you're just putting pins in there. You're getting those little strips of pins and sticking those in. But if you go with a larger connector, then in the future you're going to have to start worrying about how close together are they. And so that's just more stuff that as you look at it, it'll become more obvious when you get the board back, start putting stuff on. You say, oh, gee, I could do this next time, or don't do this, or whatever that comes out to be. Another issue in the upper right hand corner, you got that mounting hole. It's pretty close to that connector there. So depending when you go to put your screw in, it may or may not fit there. But you'll figure things like that out as you look at it and say, oh yeah, in the future I'll have to remember that. I know some of the CAD packages, when you place down a hole like that, it gives you a little line around the outside. It's a clearance indicator. So when you put it down, you can say, is that going to overlap the pattern of that connector there? And if it is, then you can move one or the other, move them around a little bit. So, but this one isn't quite as sophisticated, but it looks like it's really quick. You just slap stuff down and say go, and it connects it. So that's very, very helpful to not have to learn all this other stuff about printed circuit boards and their fancy software just to get anything created. So, but when you get it back, we'll find out how well all this is going to work out.
It is. That's true. It's just in the virtual world now.
And there's enough people using this, I'm guessing, that you're not going to have a problem with all the hole sizes or anything like that. But we'll see when it comes. We'll see. It looks like if I can believe this picture here, it looks like the holes in your connectors are larger diameter than the holes for your processor there. And depending who made this pattern for the processor, this may or may not. You'll find out when you get it to see if it fits into there well.
One of the steps you can do is export what it refers to as the etchable PDF, and it was a suggestion on one of the websites I was following, and it literally gives you, a black and white image, and so I was able to take the board and lay it on that piece of paper to see if the holes were lining up with the board. So it was just a crude but hopefully effective quality check to make sure at least the board was going to fit in the holes that it etched. And there's a whole bunch of variables there, I guess, and like, are they sure that my printer is printing it out the same way it's going to be etched? But that was a quality check.
Now that I'm sitting here looking at this, is the spacing the same on your processor as it is on those connectors? If you laid it on top of your printout, you probably verified that yes, those are going to line up. It just looks like the pins on the processor are closer together than 1/10 of an inch, compared to those connectors at the top. But it might just be an optical illusion.
Oh, you'll kill me if it's not. No, I did not do that. Let's see where the.
It looks like the one for the processor simply has smaller holes, and then it looks like they're closer together than the connectors you got. So that's another interesting thing that when we get it back, we'll find out. Find out if those are going to fit or not.
Yeah. So I got that.
On that screen that's displayed, is there anywhere to measure stuff? Can you turn on a grid so we can see?
I am. Says you can set grid size.
If you zoom in on it, will the grid show up?
It's really faint, isn't it?
Oh, if it's there, then it's faint, but I can't see anything.
See, there's a grid over here underneath the underneath the board. It doesn't lay it over top of the board.
Oh. There's probably a setting you can turn it on, because that's the whole point of having the grid, is so you know where to put the parts on the thing. So possibly under view, you can go turn on the grid and make it show up better.
But this, I can't read that. Let's see if I can make it. Hole diameter, ring thickness. It's not letting me drop that down. You know, it could be a painful lesson learned. Through hole single form position. It says pin space. I'm reading that as 0.1, 2.5 millimeters.
So if you go look at the ESP32, does it talk about the pins on that?
Let's see in this metadata.
I can see the grid for the pins there.
I don't see a measure tool.
I was thinking that, how you had that board up and then you clicked on a connector and it was telling you the information. You can do that same thing with the processor, whatever you did before.
Yeah, I did edit part. It's not doing anything. There's no right clicking.
Pull up your board file again. And
This one?
somehow you clicked on something there and it showed you over on the right. How did you get that connector to show up?
Yeah, over here on the My Parts, I right-clicked and edit part. Same with the right-clicked and edit part on the, well, I didn't edit this part, but
Well, there you can see a grid there, but the grid's really large. Well, no, it's I guess it is on the lines. I can just barely see them, but so now if you pull up the that other board, pull up the big board and do the same thing, does that show up right?
yeah. This board,
Well, again, however you got to the point you were to show that connector, but show the, is there a grid in the background on this one?
It's clicked, but you just can't see it.
No, I
Yeah.
don't see anything there, so.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. It's gonna be a Christmas surprise.
Yeah. So if you're able to print out the board layout on a printer, then you can just lay your processor on top and see if the pins line up and see if the holes line up or the
It's-
connectors line up.
And it definitely did, but I did not take a 3-pin connector and put it on those points, which I can do this evening. Because you're right, really they do look larger.
And on those connectors, you could take the individual pins and solder in. If it turns out they are not on 10th-inch centers, depending what you're plugging into it, if you've got a physical connector you're plugging in, then they have to be right. But if you're just plugging in jumper wires, then it doesn't matter if they're the wrong spacing. So
Yeah.
I guess you'll find out when you, as I say, when you get it, you'll learn a lot more.
It'll be learning exercise number 1. Anyway, it's been fun. Maybe it's just those rings around that make it look.
It might be. It might just be because you don't have anywhere where the connectors are the same angle as the. Oh, there you can do that. So yeah, if you just dragged it up and put it right up close to them, they do look closer now than what they did before. Yeah, those are the same, all the same spacing. So much as be an optical illusion. And when you get really ambitious, it turns out you can run traces in between your pads that are on there, and you have to look at it, decide if you got enough spacing to make that work, or if you have to. Sometimes you can make your traces narrower, but anyway, that's when you get ready to do some more, you'll think of these things. And
Yeah, they did talk about making the traces smaller. I just chose to stick with the default, because I'm like, hey, for this one, I think I'll just try to default as much as possible. We'll see how that works out.
And also in the future, you might consider any pads that are not connected on the processor, just run them out and put a row of holes out there, so they're just connected to the holes, so you got something to solder wires into or whatever, as opposed to having to flip the board over and solder to the back, solder to an individual pin. But just as you go along, you'll just think of things like that you'll think about.
So it'll be fun to see what shows up. It's just it shakes my head that $24 of the $30 is air freight. But I wish there was a US somebody that had their timing more nailed down, then hey, we'll get to you in a month.
I know SparkFun has a service, and that might be them. That Oshpark might actually be SparkFun. But what they do is they take a bunch of orders in and make up one big panel, and then make that all at the same time. That's why they're saying they're going to get back to you in some amount of time, because they apparently don't have. If they just run a big panel with all this stuff on, then it's not real convenient to you. But
How big is the panel? Just out of curiosity.
I
What'd you
have
get?
no, I have no idea. They make it whatever size fits on the printed circuit board making equipment. So they'll take all the little designs and somebody will sit down and paste all these together into one giant board. And then they make that one board and then that gets cut out and it comes back and then they just take the individual pieces and send it to you. And it could be that's what this company, you know, any of the companies you send to might be doing that on their own. They're just not telling you about it.
And they just have more volume to run a sheet through.
But just the standard size sheets is what it's made for. So they just stick all the stuff. You know, you might want a board that's this big, but they might put it on a panel, you know, it's 3 foot by 3 foot. So you're wasting a lot of material there by doing that. So if they can put multiple designs together, that just, it makes it better for them to get all the
Right.
stuff to come out.
Interesting. Well, that's been my trip so far.
Did you happen to notice when you're looking at the 4-layer boards, what the pricing was on those?
It wasn't much more, to be quite honest. It was, I think instead of $5 for 5 boards, it would have been $12 or something like that.
Because I would expect the multi-layer boards to be, you know, 10 times as much or something, but it's been a long, long time since I've looked at this stuff, so I didn't know what, you know, where the market is going and what they're doing with this stuff.
Yeah, I didn't. My recollection is it was more, but not like a crazy amount more. Let's just see if I can get it logged in here. I don't know if I'm logged in. No. Let me share my screen. And do I still have my, let's see, where did you upload the,
So were these all defaults at the screen that popped up? Did they already have all this selected? Right there, you could click on 4 layers right in the middle of the screen if that is what
they
you're
were all
looking for.
defaults. I mean, I selected all of the defaults.
Because when you first start this, if they don't have a bunch of defaults, you have to go through and figure out what each one of those things means and try to get it right, and then hope it's going to be right when it comes back.
Just trying to figure out where. Maybe because I was logged in, I don't think I'm logged in yet. Oh, and I don't have it for some reason. It's not showing up there.
It might be best not to record your secrets anyway as you're trying to log in case it, for some reason, happens to put your password and stuff up. That probably wouldn't be a good use of everyone's time.
Anyway, yeah, I think somewhere along the way it just said, hey, give me your zip file, and I uploaded it.
As long as in your zip file it says top layer and bottom layer, you should be okay. Otherwise, it might come back. You have to put the board upside down, or you might have all kinds of weird things like that too to deal with. But I assume when you ran the manufacturing process, it said this is top layer, this is bottom layer, and if they take them and say that's top and bottom layer, the board should come out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, Fritzing takes a stab at guessing that, and then you change it around if you want. Anyway, Oh, I know why it's not logging on, just because, yeah, on this computer, I don't have that. I didn't use this computer when I uploaded it, so. Anyway, that's what's going on here.
Okay, let me look at my notes here. So I was going through cleaning stuff out. I got a bunch of RC cars laying around, and all they're all in the hall right now. But they're the ones I've collected from like the thrift stores where you go in and you get a car for $3 that somebody has bought for Christmas, and then they get rid of them. So you can find stuff there. So you have to go down the line and look at them, say, does the back have a differential on it or not? And it's also nice. Ideally, you'd want to find one that's got a differential in the back and the little 2-speed gear shift thing on those, because most of them, if you buy them, if it is meant to be like it looks like a race car, the thing is going to go way too fast to do robotic stuff. So if you can find one that goes slow, and say if you can find a piece of RC equipment that was meant to be like a piece of construction equipment, it might drive around slow enough so you don't have to modify anything. You just put power on it and it'll drive slow enough to be usable. Or if you find something, I know if you go look out on Amazon and eBay, we'll talk about like a rock crusher or something like that. Some kind of a what's supposed to be like a truck with lots of suspension and drives very slowly for driving over sticks and logs and rocks and stuff. And so just if you could find one ahead of time that matches the kind of stuff you want, you'd probably be better off. So anyway, I was going through my collection here, and I found like maybe 2 or 3 of them have a differential and 2 or 3 of them don't. So the ones that don't have a differential, I'll probably just throw those in a box and take them back to the thrift store to get rid of them. And then you can look at the steering on it and decide, does it have, is it built strong enough to be usable? And if it is, then does it have enough travel right and left? And most of them don't, because again, if you got a car that drives really fast, they don't want it to turn sharp. So you have to decide, can you take it apart, take the stops out and get it to turn sharper? And if you get it turned sharper, is that going to hit the frame? All kinds of things like that. And then some of them will have like a motor inside to run the steering back and forth. And that at least would have all the gearing and stuff in it if you want to run it that way. And so some of them just have a motor, and from the really cheap ones on the remote control, you say turn right, it just simply moves that all the way to the right and locks up against the frame. Whereas then a slightly smarter one will work like an actual RC servo. So it'll have like a feedback pot on the steering. So the thing will, it'll give you a proportional steering and work correctly. So you can look at those two before you buy them. And the other trick is you take 2 RC cars, you cut it in half, you take the back half that you like and hook it onto a front half that you like. And that way you can also change the wheelbase and stuff too as you're doing that. So if you're willing to start hacking the stuff up, that would be another way to go on that. So that was just something I saw this crap laying around. I want to get rid of it. And I thought, well, I've collected all these cars and some may work and some may not. So that's something I've been doing. Just sitting around looking at those.
Do you have one with a differential there handy?
I think so. Let me grab one. Yeah, here's one that I have that was I took the body off from it, but in general, it's got in the back, it's got a differential to do this. If I turn it this way, the other one turns the opposite direction. And you turn them both forward, then it turns the motor. And this one also happens to have the other thing I was talking about. It's got the little gear shift knob on here, so you can set it for high or low. And set it to high, it goes really fast. You put it low, it goes somewhat slower. So that'd just be a matter of deciding if that'll work. This is also a nice one because it's got a this whole thing in the back is it just let's see, it pivots right across here. So the whole back section pivots there, and then it's got these springs on the top. So see it goes up and down like that. So I could take that whole thing off as a unit, and it just got wires coming out. It's got, for some reason, there's 3 wires coming out, and I don't know if one of them is a feedback, or it's just simple. It's got a little black wire that might just be grounding the motor frame, so it just cuts down the electrical noise or something. So anyway, that's something to look for. If you buying one, get one that does have a differential already. If you want to get, see, this way I can put an encoder on this wheel and put an encoder on this wheel and get differential odometry directly off that. So that's something to consider. And this particular one also seems to have some fairly decent steering on it. That's the limit of the steering right there. So I have to figure out how to take out. There's got to be some stops in there somewhere that I can cut out and make it turn sharper. And that's not really a bad ratio from front to back, but I could, trim an inch or so off that. Actually, this one might be as is, be close enough to use to do, just build a mini lawn tractor out of it. And the other thing is, if you get too small, you don't have room to put anything on, but this one has enough room. I could probably, put a Raspberry Pi and put one of these kind of laser scanners off the vacuum cleaner. It's got just the module that goes on top. So if you look at them side by side, this is I can't see what I'm doing here. So anyway, so if you take that laser scanner and put on top, take the laser scanner off this one and put on the top of this one. And then see, this one's also got a Raspberry Pi on it. So you can see there's room to put a Raspberry Pi on that car. So it's just a matter of trying to decide, is that gonna do what you want it to? And the alternative is you can go out and buy expensive cars. You can go get the Traxxas stuff. So you go to your hobby shop and spend $600 on a little radio controlled car. And to me, I'd rather pay $3 at a thrift store and hack it up than put that kind of money into it. So that was my the last week or so. This is what I've been thinking about on the radio control cars. As I say, I'm trying to get rid of stuff. So that was my criteria. Find one that would work. I got this giant one, which is out in the hall right now, but it's about this big. It's just huge.
Wow.
But the problem is it does not have a differential in the back. It's just a live axle. And the steering in the front does have a motor built into it. It actually looks like it's built like an RC servo, but I think they made it themselves. But that one, if it had a decent back end, decent differential, I would keep that one. But I think I'm just going to scrap that one too. So I'll just take all the stuff and take it back over, and still get their price tags on, so they can just put it back on the shelf, and that should keep everybody happy. The other thing I was doing, last time I was talking about trying to buy go-kart parts off Amazon or eBay to do the steering stuff. And in the meantime, I've just been looking at a lot of like YouTube videos and people making all this stuff from scratch. And it amazes me to watch these guys that they don't have a mill, they don't have a lathe, they got an angle grinder, they got a welder and a drill press, and they can make anything. And that just amazes me, where they just pick up this big piece of flat metal and cut it up into pieces and then weld it back together and make these pieces. Like I try to buy this stuff directly off Amazon so I can just weld it onto the front. And people are making all those little pieces from scratch. And so that was kind of interesting. I ended up wasting a lot of time digging through that, but the more I look at it, I realize, yeah, you can make anything and you don't have to have a mill and a lathe to do this stuff. So that's something I was doing. And then also I was saying that, right now I was talking about a RC car with a differential in the back. And on my mini tractor, I could point up here and say it's this one, but I don't have my background turned on because I took my green screen down so I could get my closet here to clean it out. So that the mini tractor has a mobility scooter transaxle. So it's like a high quality thing that's meant to move people around, and it worked out really well. I found it on I think on eBay, and I paid like $50 for it. I don't remember if I had to pay shipping or not. And I bolted it on and I was ready to go. And it's got, as I say, it was meant to move people around to start with. So it's nice and heavy duty, and it's nice and precise, and it's nice and quiet when it drives around. So every once in a while I think, well, I should look on eBay and find some more of those. Well, when I do, they're like $200 now. You can't find any cheap ones. And that's because maybe it's just a matter you have to catch them when somebody's got some they're trying to unload and you can get them cheaply. But I keep remembering after I bought this first one, I kept thinking, I've got some of those out in my garage. I've got 2 or 3 in a plastic box out there that back in the BattleBots days, a guy that at his shop, his shop was right next door to what became NPC Robotics, which is the company that sells motors for robotic stuff. And at one point, the guy gave him a whole pallet full of these transaxles. And so while I was there doing the BattleBot stuff, I was just helping out building robots for him. And he said, "Oh, I'll sell you those for like $5 a piece or $10 a piece, whatever they were." And I had to dig through the box because he said the problem was there's a coupler that goes between the motor and the gearbox, just a little round piece, like flat piece with a couple slots cut in it. And he said, "Well, if you could find one of those that I can use for a pattern, go ahead and pull that out, and then I'll sell you the motors for, as I say, they're like $5 a piece or something for the motor and the transaxle." And I dug through his box and I found like 10 of them, and he was pretty pleased with that. So I ended up getting all the little adapters to go between them for my stuff. So if I just go out and find them, I think I was digging through my garage a long time ago. I got down the point, I didn't find them, and I realized right there on the bottom in the big yellow plastic box is where they got to be. I just haven't gone out and verified what they are. There is a difference between these because you need to get them. The one that I got has on the ends for the bearings, it's got like a pillow block bearing type thing, so it's got a bearing and then 2 mounting holes. So you just put it on, drill holes in your frame and bolt it down, and you're ready to go. And then the other ones just have, instead of having that, it's got a square piece on the end. So it was meant to drop into, like, the frame was built in a way that you drop this 2 square pieces down into this hole in the frame they've created. So that'd be a matter of trying to figure out how to do that. And I think I could probably, if that's the way they're built, I could probably figure out a way to do that fairly easily. So that's nice to put one of those in the back, but now that sets how wide my vehicle is going to be, because you really can't modify that too much. And then I could put these on. These are some kind of plastic. They're like lawnmower wheels, but they're bigger. It's maybe an 8-inch or 10-inch diameter. That's got a 3/4 inch hole, which will fit on those transaxles. So I might use these instead of putting the big pneumatic tires on.
Where'd you get those?
The local surplus store, or there's various, there's Harbor Freight, and there's Northern Handyman, and then we're down at like one surplus store left. And depending where you go, you can get various things. Well, actually, it's got a sticker on. Let me see what it says. It says Axeman, so it's the surplus store, and I paid $5 for it. Paid $4.95 for this wheel, and it's heavier than it really needs to be, but I think it's lighter than the steel wheel and the pneumatic tire. So anyway, I thought if I keep collecting parts, maybe one of these days I'll just start out a second one of my mini tractors. Actually, it'll be the third one, but the first one was pretty big that I decided it was too big and I moved on. So let's say that was so anyways, looking at the go-kart parts, and one of the guys was saying, well, you go out and buy this pipe, and it's like a thick wall pipe, and it's DOM, drawn over mandrel, which means in the middle it doesn't have a seam, so they didn't take something flat and wrap it around and weld it, or however they normally do it. So down the center, it's going to be smooth enough that you can put a bolt through, and it's not going to be a problem. And much to my amazement, I went out on Amazon and said DOM 1-inch diameter something, and sure enough, I can buy a 12-inch piece of that stuff. So here's for a model. This is actually PVC, but you can get one that's steel. It has so it was a 1-inch diameter with a 1/4 inch wall. So it meant, so down the middle it had a 1/2 inch hole. You can put a 1/2 inch bolt through there. And I thought I could do that, or I could probably just grab a piece of steel rod from the hardware store. So we'll assume this is steel. So you just cut that off and then just take a drill press and drill my hole down through it. Because if it only has to be like 2 inches high, I should be able to get a hole close enough to the center on that to do that. So that's just more stuff I was thinking about trying to. The whole point is this is what so you got a bolt on here. That's your axle that your wheel goes on. So you weld a bolt onto the side of this thing so the thing can turn. So, if you look at your lawn tractor, it's kind of, but the lawn tractors are the opposite way, where it's got like a bent piece of metal for the axle, and then you just got a hole through the axle itself that goes into. So anyway, I keep looking at this stuff and wasting time and trying to think of the best way to do it. And so far, I don't really have the best way to do it. So a combination of looking at a front end and back end, and I keep thinking on the back end, if I could find a cute little differential from something, and I can't think, the only ones I can think of is like the transaxle I've got that's already all in one, has the motor, the reduction of the differential and bearings and everything, or you can buy just a differential. And back in the old days, when you could buy the cute little riding lawnmowers, they're like $200, and has like a 5 horsepower engine and little tiny go-kart tires on it. Those were separate pieces. You had the engine, and then you had a transmission was separate, and then it had a differential in the back with wheels hooked onto it. So back in the old days, you could pick those up everywhere, but I don't know if you could still. They've probably scrapped all those and gone for the bigger ones now. So the other thing was, let's see. So the little riding lawnmowers would have been the perfect size for it. And then if you go look for them, I can't find anything in between that and say like a radio controlled car. It'd be nice to find one that's maybe half the size of a riding lawnmower. And the other thing is the modern riding lawnmowers, they have, the full transaxle in the back. So it's got like this big chunk of aluminum, and it's got like a shaft on the top with a pulley. And whether it's a automatic transmission or a manual transmission, they seem to work the same way. So you just hook a belt on that and turn it, but it's got lots of extra junk in there. So I saw some people were taking those apart. A guy took a manual transmission apart and took out the differential. He put it on the back of his bicycle, one of the 3-wheel bicycles that he either bought it or he made it. But that was something where they'd taken an actual part like that and taken it out and used it for something else. But again, that seems like a lot of work. So, and for the moment, I decided I really like that mobility scooter transaxle that I have. And if I have 2 or 3 more out in the garage, then it'd just be a matter of finding one and designing around that. So that's just more stuff I've been looking at and thinking about. I guess that pretty well sums up the my list of things that I haven't been doing. So
Cool. Well, I'm just inch by inch, ever so slowly. I think we can cut the recording.